Hey everyone, it's Jamie, and today I'm going to show you how to make your own mermaid tail blanket. Now, I've seen a few online tutorials out there already, but I think a lot of them are really long and really complicated, so this tutorial is meant to help you out regardless of your skill level. And I know you can buy something like this in stores or on Etsy, but as Sebastian from The Little Mermaid once said, if you want something done, you gotta do it yourself. AKA, let's DIY this SOB. Let's do it, girl. Okay, here's what you'll need. 4 yards of fleece, or any other comfortable blanket material, a needle and thread, or if you're not a fan of sewing, a strong fabric glue, sewing pins or safety pins, a measuring tool, a writing tool, and tail embellishments, from complimentary stuffing to fabric to decorations. All right, let's make like a mermaid and dive right in. I'm just assuming mermaids dive, actually, I have no idea. It just seems more efficient than a cannonball. Step 1. The first step is to mark your body's measurements onto your fabric. With your feet shoulder width apart, measure the length from your toes to your elbows. Make a note where your hips and knees land within these measurements. Then measure the width of your hips, your knees, and your feet. You want your fabric folded in half with the nice sides faced together. Trace out your measurements starting with the length from your toes to your elbows. Then add in the segments for your hips, knees, and feet. I added a couple of inches to these measurements so that I could have some wiggle room within the blanket, and then added 1 more inch for seam allowance. Using these dimensions as a sort of skeleton, freehand an outline from bottom to top. And now you have a perfect fit for your body. To save time, you can also just lie down on your fabric and trace your body. But having measurements ahead of time means that you can make this blanket for anyone, not just yourself, and it gives you a neater outline to start with as you work. Also, I gave my blanket a lot of wiggle room at the feet, as if I were making a regular blanket. But for a true mermaid tail, it needs to be snug at the bottom. So I'll return to my original measurements and trace an outline from there to my knees. Either way works, it just depends on how snug and mermaidy you want your tail. Step 2. Now's the time to create the fins of your tail, whether you use an online template or draw them freehand. I marked out a few guidelines to help me keep the fins even, and then did my best attempt to create a pair of fins. Once you've finished tracing your tail, you're ready to cut it all out. You can either follow your scissors around the complete outline you just drew, or you can first fold one side of your tail over the other side. It ensures a perfectly symmetrical tail. Almost there, mermaidens. All that's left to do is to sew or glue your tail together. I used a blanket stitch to sew my tail up from one end to the other. You can find a lot of great blanket stitch tutorials online if you need help getting started. Once you're done, flip your material inside out and your blanket is technically ready to go. Feel free to stop here, or if you want to make your tail even more mermazing, I've got a few fun ideas for you. 1. Stuff your fins. They can lose their shape as you move in your blanket, so plump them up as much as you like with cotton batting until you get to your desired look. When you're finished, feel free to sew up your fins to seal them shut. Or just leave it as is, because your feet should never actually reach the stuffing, and then that way you have the opportunity to stuff more later if your fins ever lose their poofiness. Poofiness? Is that a word? Whatever. If Ariel can use the term dingle hopper, I think I can use the word poofiness here. 2. Sew a body to the tail. Place another folded piece of fabric the same width as your tail at the top of the tail. This fabric can be as short or as long as you like in any shape that you like. I measured from my elbow to my neck and then repeated that same measurement on the tail. Connect the body to the tail using the same blanket stitch from earlier. Then I used a few plates as a guideline in order to cut out a sort of mermaid shell look around the top of my fabric. Now, since the tail is so snug, I kind of like the idea of the body of the blanket opening up for you to slide inside. So I kept one side of the blanket open before adding a hem around the body's material to finish off the look. And we did it, mermigos! A full-fledged mermaid tail blanket at your service. Now, obviously there's a million and one ways that you could DIY this blanket. You could make the body and the tail any colors that you want. You could sew on the fins separately to make those a different color, or you could substitute with like colorful tools so that way you have like a flowy tail as opposed to stuffed tail. If you didn't use a patterned fabric, then you could add in fabric to mimic like flowers and scales. And honestly, you could just skip the whole mermaid theme and use this exact same tutorial to make a shark blanket or a whale blanket or a walrus blanket and so on. And now you know the secret to the most beautiful way to snuggle up indoors. Makes me wonder if there are mermaids out there DIYing human leg blankets to cuddle up in. Just a thought. What type of blanket tail did you make? Tweet me at Jamie Petito, Instagram me at HeyJamie, or just let me know on my fan page on Facebook. If you enjoyed making your own blanket from scratch, click the video on your left to make your own no-sew blanket and pillow. And if you don't mind all that sewing, click the video on your right to sew together your own emoji pillow. We did it, girl. I'm Jamie, and you're on Gurl.com. See ya!